It was a Wednesday morning, one of those unusually warm March days when the breeze carries just a hint of spring. I had been juggling a million things at once, from getting the laundry done to preparing dinner in advance, to answering work emails from my home office that never seemed to stop. Life as a single mom of two wasn't easy, but I had gotten used to the rhythm of the chaos. Still, I wasn't prepared for what my 8-year-old son, Joshua, would ask me later that day. That week, all Joshua could talk about was his upcoming birthday. He was turning 9 and had been counting down for weeks, even marking each passing day on the little calendar on our fridge. "Only 2 days, Mom," he'd say with a grin that made my heart swell and ache all at once. I'd smile back and pretend everything was under control, even though I hadn't yet bought his birthday cake or figured out how to afford a party on my tight budget. Joshua was a sweet boy, thoughtful, observant, the kind of kid who could sense when I was exhausted just by looking at my face. He'd offer to help with dishes or tell me jokes to make me smile. His younger sister, Emma, was more energetic, a whirlwind of curiosity at just 5 years old. Together, they were my world. I'd been planning a small celebration, just a few of his friends from school, some pizza, maybe a homemade cake. But that morning, Joshua came into the kitchen, his pajamas wrinkled, his hair sticking up at odd angles, and he asked if we could talk privately later. I was caught off guard. He was usually so open, so eager to share things right away. I nodded and ruffled his hair. "Of course, buddy. After school?" He nodded solemnly, like he was carrying something serious in that little heart of his. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I worked, cleaned, picked up Emma from preschool, and reminded myself to stop by the grocery store for party supplies. I kept wondering what Joshua wanted to talk about. My imagination ran wild. Was he being bullied? Did he want to invite someone special? Or was it something else entirely? When I picked him up from school, he was quiet. Not sad, just thoughtful. He climbed into the back seat and stared out the window the whole ride home. Emma chattered away in the front seat, excited about some butterfly project she made. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, trying to read Joshua's expression, but he gave nothing away. After dinner, mac and cheese with steamed broccoli, one of their favorites, I tucked Emma into bed and found Joshua sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, hugging his favorite stuffed bear. That bear had been with him since he was a toddler, missing an eye, stitched across the back, but loved fiercely. I sat next to him, my hands clasped in my lap. "So," I said gently, "what did you want to talk about?" He looked up at me, his blue eyes searching mine. Then, without preamble, he said, "I don't want a birthday party this year." I blinked. "You don't?" He shook his head slowly. "Nope. I've been thinking a lot, Mom. I know money's tight. I hear you on the phone sometimes trying to figure out how to pay the bills. And I know you're tired. You do so much for me and Emma." He paused, his lower lip trembling just a little, but he kept going. "So, for my birthday, I just want one thing." I was stunned. I didn't know what to say. My throat tightened. "Okay," I said carefully. "What's the one thing?" He took a deep breath and looked down at his bear. "I want us to go visit Dad's grave together. And I want to bring him a piece of cake. I think he'd like that. I want to tell him about school and Emma and you. I want him to know we're okay." I froze. For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. The tears came fast. No matter how hard, I tried to hold them back. My son, my sweet Joshua, was asking for something so simple and yet so profound. His father, my late husband, Ryan, had passed away 3 years earlier in a car accident. It was sudden, brutal, and left a hole in all of our lives. I had visited the grave a few times alone, but never with the kids. I thought they were too young to understand, especially Emma. But Joshua, clearly, had been carrying this quietly all along. "Oh, honey," I whispered, wrapping my arms around him. He buried his face in my shoulder, and we sat like that for a while, just holding each other. No birthday cake, no party hats or balloons. Just grief, love, and the incredible tenderness of a child who wanted to honor his father. The next day, I rearranged everything. I canceled the little get-together we had planned, refunded what I could, and called the bakery to ask for a small chocolate cake, Ryan's favorite. I told them to write "We love you" on it in simple white icing. Then I told Emma gently that we were going to take a little trip to visit a special place. She didn't fully understand, but she nodded and agreed to wear the dress her dad used to say made her look like a princess. We drove an hour outside the city to the quiet cemetery nestled among tall oak trees and rolling green hills. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful. The kind of place where the wind seems to whisper stories of those who rest there. I carried the cake in a small box, and Joshua held a drawing he made for his dad, a picture of the three of us, holding hands under a bright sun. When we reached Ryan's grave, I knelt down and brushed away some leaves that had blown across the stone. Joshua stood beside me, still and reverent, while Emma leaned against my leg, looking curious. "Hi, Dad," Joshua said softly, his voice quivering. "Happy birthday. I know it's not your birthday, but it's mine, and I wanted to spend it with you." He laid the picture at the base of the stone and looked up at me. "Can I tell him stuff?" "Of course," I said, my voice barely a whisper. He knelt beside me and began to talk. About school. About his favorite books. About how Emma had learned how to ride her scooter without falling. About me, how I worked hard and made pancakes on Sundays, even when I was tired. I wept silently, overwhelmed by the beauty of his words. When he finished, he opened the box and pulled out a small slice of cake. He set it gently on a paper plate and placed it in front of the headstone. "I saved you a piece," he said. "Chocolate. Just like you liked." We stood in silence for a while after that. Then Emma tugged at my sleeve and asked if she could sing. I didn't know what she meant, but she began humming a lullaby I used to sing when they were babies. It was sweet and slightly off-key, but it was perfect. As we drove home, I felt a kind of peace I hadn't known in years. Joshua leaned his head against the car window, smiling slightly. "That was the best birthday," he said softly. It was in that moment I realized something. Sometimes, the most powerful gifts don't come wrapped in ribbons or boxes. Sometimes, they come from the heart of a child who sees the world more clearly than any adult ever could. Joshua didn't want toys or games. He didn't want parties or presents. He wanted to connect, to remember, to love. That night, after tucking both kids in, I sat alone in the kitchen and looked at the leftover cake. I cut myself a small slice and took a bite, tears running freely now, not just from sadness, but from awe. My son had reminded me what truly matters. Love, memory, family. The things that can't be bought but are felt deep within the soul. From that year forward, we made it a tradition. Every year on Joshua's birthday, we visit Ryan's grave with cake and stories. Emma calls it Daddy's Sky Party.